Че? Че экран уебали, в смысле?
Прибавил экран.
Верхний.
Я все разобрался.
Всем приехали. Это хорошо. Что дальше такое? Ну и каша здесь.
А ось підвал в одному з будинків Бучі. В одному приміщенні окупанти влаштували собі казарму. В сусідньому ж розстрілювали мирних мешканців. Їхні тіла і досі тут.
Вот это колено, свои колена. Это Смельников. Сначала колено прострелил, видишь, что с коленом.
Зв'язали руки, поставили на коліна до стіни. Постріл в голову. І все. Людини більше немає. Зв'язали руки.
Really?
The drone showed civilians trying to get to Kyiv to escape the Russians. And then they saw the tank. One of the cars was forced to stop. The driver tried to show he was harmless, and the Russians shot him dead. Almost 4 weeks later, Maxim's badly burnt body lies next to the hulk of their car. His wedding ring is still on his finger. Ksenia's remains are inside. Her mouth is open, as if in a scream. The car and the back seat are riddled with bullets. The vehicle and their bodies were not burnt when they were killed. The hypothesis is that Russian soldiers tried to destroy the evidence of what they'd done.
Коли тікали звідти. За словами Нові... 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 Тікали коли тікали звідти. За словами Нові... Коли тікали звідти. За словами Нові...
What the hell? It's the Russians.
Now, moving on, in a big blow to Ukraine's dream of joining the European Union, the 27-member bloc has now rejected Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's plea of an immediate membership for his country. This came after Zelensky on Monday signed a membership application formally requesting that Ukraine join the bloc. Now, Zelensky asked for a special procedure on Monday, saying that this will help Ukraine be together with other European nations and will also give Kiev a better footing while dealing with the ongoing Russian aggression. Now, a divide is also clearly visible between the existing bloc members regarding Ukraine's membership. While more than 6 countries, mainly the Baltic nations, supported Ukraine's membership, Germany and France said that it cannot be done immediately. European Union officials have also cited long procedure as the reason for rejecting Ukraine's application. EU membership is a long and complicated process, and negotiations generally take several years before a country gets formal admission to the bloc. Now, the first step to the membership starts only after a country becomes an eligible candidate for the post. Then, lengthy negotiations start, during which it has to prove that it meets the European Union's democratic, economic and political standards. Bloc aspirants, they generally need to go through a lot of reforms and re-reforms before they reach EU standards.
We are with you as you dream of Europe. Dear Volodymyr, my message today is very clear. Ukraine belongs to the European family. We've heard your request loud and clear. And today we're here to give you a first positive answer. In this envelope, dear Volodymyr, there is an important step towards EU membership. The questionnaire that is in here is the basis for our discussion in the coming weeks. It is where your path towards Europe and the European Union begins. Let me promise you for this questionnaire that I will hand over to you in a moment. A questionnaire, of course, has to be answered. These are questions that then form the opinion of the European Union as a recommendation to the Council. We stand ready 24 hours, 7 days a week to support you in filling out this questionnaire. We know a lot about each other because we've been working together so intensively over the last years. So it will be not as usual a matter of years to form this opinion, but I think a matter of weeks if we work closely together. So for you, dear Volodymyr,
thank you so much.
I want to give you that. This is the questionnaire.
CNN's Jim Sciutto was quickly out with a story sourced to 2 top U.S. officials. He wrote, in the U.S. view, this is not a short-term adjustment to regroup, but a longer-term move as Russia comes to grips with failure to advance in the north. The official said one consequence the U.S. is concerned about is keeping the European allies unified on economic pressure and military support, as Washington expects some of them to press Ukraine to accept a peace deal to end the fighting. Wait, what? So most of the world is worried that this could accidentally trip into World War III, and Washington is worried that European countries might want a peace deal to end the war in Europe?
So today we are proposing to take our sanctions a step further. We will make them broader and sharper so that they cut even deeper into the Russian economy.
Yeah, the thing to emphasize at first is we do not know what happened in this small town. I've seen some pictures that we won't show, but it is very grisly. It's very horrible and disgusting. It looks like at least dozens, if not more, civilians dead, many with their hands tied behind their backs. We don't know who did it, but I think we do know because we've been in this business long enough, going back before the show, and back to the days of Colin Powell and at the UN, et cetera, that if everyone agrees, quote unquote, in the U.S., all the media, all the neocons, all the neoliberals, if they all agree on that one thing means one thing, then our antenna go up. It doesn't mean we instinctively disagree, but our antenna does go up, and this is exactly what's happening. And we have our friend Joe Lauria at Consortium News to thank for a very concise look at the timeline of what happened. And this is what's interesting. We can put that first one up, because here's his article if anyone wants to go read it. �consortiumnews.com. He wrote a piece, "Questions Abound About Bucha Massacre." Now here's a couple of things, okay, just in a nutshell. So the news broke on Sunday that hundreds of innocent people were slaughtered in Bucha, not far from Kiev. Immediately, of course, it was blamed on Russia. Russia did it. The U.S. pundits, the think tank warriors, they called for direct conflict. This is time to really go to war with Russia. Now, Russia did an interesting thing. They immediately called for a special session of the UN Security Council. They said, we immediately need to talk about this, immediately. The UK chairs the council right now, and they said no. They said no twice, which is suspicious. Why don't they want to immediately take up the issue, especially when you have the evidence sitting there in the street that really needs an impartial investigation immediately? We don't know the fact. Could the Russians have done it? Absolutely. War is disgusting. War is ugly. It's despicable. But we have to at least raise some questions. At the very least, I think, Dr. Paul, just like we've done in Syria, where a couple of these gas attacks turned out to be false flags, we should be suspicious, take a deep breath, and try to figure out what's going on.
We see this as a manifestation of the fact that the Kiev regime is controlled by Washington and its allies, who are pushing President Zelensky to continue hostilities.
Another main part of what he said is the fact that Kiev is taking marching orders from the West. And that's actually not really a new concept for many people who have been following this conflict. Long before Russia's military operation began, the U.S. and its NATO alliance were sending tons of weapons to Ukraine, and they were sending military advisors to train its troops. It's actually as if the West wanted a direct conflict, a proxy war between Moscow and Kiev. The Washington Post even said that basically some NATO countries want to see Ukrainians continue to fight and continue to die in this conflict. And that's only really reiterated by what Western leaders have been saying lately.
I also expect that ministers, when they meet today and tomorrow, will discuss how we can further support Ukraine.
Our congresspersons saying, "What have you done?" And he basically looked at him and said, "What the hell do you think we've done? Why do you think they're able to fight? We've trained them and we've given them the weapons." That's what's happening.
It is de facto Western policy, and no one should be ashamed of it. This is a war of Russia's choosing, and as long as Ukrainians are willing to make them pay for their decision, we should help them.
Even now, the U.S. is planning to send even more weapons to Ukraine using the Lend-Lease Act. Now, for any fan of history, that person would know that the U.S. used this bill in World War II to lend out military equipment to countries that were fighting the Nazis, and the Soviet Union was one of its main recipients. So it really is ironic that now this bill is being used once again, funded by seized Russian assets from bank accounts, and the weapons that are sent to Ukraine are inevitably going to fall into the hands of actual neo-Nazis that are fighting Russians on the ground. Now, to add insult to injury, really, 𝐤𝐴𝐺, he's a close advisor to Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky. He recently admitted that he knew that an armed direct conflict between Moscow and Kiev would break out before it actually did. So this begs the question, why did the Ukrainian authorities not warn ordinary people about this in advance? Why didn't they allow them to have the chance at saving themselves and their families? Well, 𝐤𝐴𝐺 said himself that he didn't want them to leave.
It was possible to tell the Ukrainians that Russia would attack when we knew for sure that it would. But this would have provoked a massive flow of 12 to 16 million refugees. They would have blocked all the roads. And then the army would not have reached the defense areas. And the inhabitants would have to be crushed with tanks and shot.
Now, this statement is really significant because it basically confirms what the Russian Ministry of Defense has been saying about Ukrainian tactics since the beginning of its military operation. In Mariupol, in Kiev, and now we know in Ukraine as a whole, Ukrainian forces have been using civilians as human shields against their will.
I don't want to get into the specific intelligence related to Bucha at this point, but what I will say, as I said at the outset, is even before the invasion happened, we shared information with the public, with the press, including from this podium, that Russia was intending, as a matter of policy, not as a matter of one guy in a unit in a suburb of Kyiv, but as a matter of policy in this war, to kill dissidents, to kill those who caused problems for the occupation, and to impose a reign of terror across occupied territories within Ukraine. That is what we are seeing play out. So no, we do not believe that this is just a random accident or the rogue act of a particular individual. We believe that this was part of the plan. We declared it from this podium as part of the plan, and now we're seeing it play out.
It is a war, yes, that Russia unleashed against an innocent Ukraine, but it's much, much more than that. On top, it is these big questions that will be decided in this war. So your fight is also our fight. And I'm here in Kiev with you today to send a very strong message that the European Union is by your side. We stand by your side. This is the message that, dear Volodymyr, I want to bring to you, but also to the Ukrainian people. We have discussed a lot of practical topics, how we can step up the European support for Ukraine. And let me be clear, we can never match the sacrifice of the Ukrainian people. Never can we match that. But we are mobilizing our economic power to make Putin pay a very, very heavy price.